Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Korfcast. This is going to be episode 3, I believe. Yeah, episode 3. So, in this one, this is going to be a bit of a personal one. To be fair, it's going to be about my real life struggles, just finding purpose, motivation, the stigma that surrounds mental health, especially with men. And just welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning into the last one and the first one, obviously. So yeah, this is going to be a personal one, so hopefully it doesn't upset too many of you or upset me or whatever. But yeah, this has got to be something that's got to be spoke about, and a lot of people wanted to see it. So I'm going to start with just when and where I was born, and just go through my life from there and big moments in life or what's happened in my life, just so you guys can get a gauge of why I'm affected with my mental health now. So I was born in 1998, 2nd of May, so that makes me 22. I was born in Cornwall, and my life started in Falmouth. So I grew up in Falmouth, that's where my life started anyway, living with my mum and my dad. I think I've only got maybe one memory of my dad being there, and it's quite a funny one, to be fair. He was leaving for work one morning, and he must have always said bye to me in the morning. And this morning, for some reason, he didn't, and he just left for work. Maybe it was earlier than normal. And I remember hearing him leave, and I had a window up the top where my bedroom was, and it looked down onto the driveway. And I remember knocking on the window, and I was crying because my dad didn't say bye, and he had to come up and say goodbye to me. But yeah, it's funny, just stuff like that. That's my only memory of my dad being at that house, to be honest. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 2 or 3 years old. Obviously, I can't really remember. I don't think this has affected me in any way, really, because my mum and dad have pretty much for the whole time got on fairly well since they divorced, which has been good for me. So there's never been really any negative effects of it. Obviously, you can joke around and say, "Oh, it's good you get 2 lots of Christmas dinner, or you get 2 lots of presents," but you'd rather have your parents together. And I think anyone of my generation, especially people who I know now, who I'm friends with, it's more common for your parents to be split up than it is for them to be together. So it's not something that I had to go through by myself. There was a lot of other people who'd been through that growing up. So it's never really negatively affected me. If it had a subconscious effect on me, I don't really know, to be honest. It's one of those things that's hard to tell. Maybe, I don't know, maybe because I just know that they got divorced. I don't want that to happen to me when I'm older. If I get married, I want that to be the person I ideally spend the rest of my life with, because it's just not nice to go through all of that, to get divorced, and things can probably get messy. I was just lucky that they didn't, between my mum and my dad. But yeah, I don't think it's really affected me much, because it happened when I was so young as well. I can't remember it. All I've known really for my whole life is my mum and dad being separated. So when we were in Falmouth, me, my brother Sam, who's 2 years older than me, and my mum lived there for another couple of years. I remember my nan used to look after me a lot, because my mum's a nurse and she'd be working night shifts and sleeping all day, or she'd be doing working in the day. So I'd be with my nan a lot, which is good because I'm close to my nan now. So yeah, that was probably a nice thing growing up. It made me close with more members of my family. So I started St Francis School in Falmouth when I was in reception, so that's age 4. And from what I can remember of it, it was good. I made friends there, people who I then bumped into later on in life at secondary school, and we remembered each other, and it was really weird. But yeah, overall it was good from what I can remember being there. It was quite a big school for a primary school. I think there was over 400 people. But yeah, it was good. And I made friends there. Obviously, I don't really speak to any of them anymore, but I was friendly with a couple of them in secondary school still. And if I seen them now, I'd still speak to them and say hello and have a catch up. But yeah, and then soon after that, when I went into year 1, so age 5, we moved to Pondsnooth, and I went to Kennel Vale School, which is in Pondsnooth, which is still where I live now. We moved there with my mum and my future stepdad, Keith, who's still my stepdad now. And yeah, it was nice to get to be somewhere different. When I first moved there, I found it a bit weird because it was obviously a new place, new school, new surroundings, new people. I remember me and my brother had these like up high bunk beds. We used to share the same room, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, it was good. It was nice to move somewhere different, and I've made a lot of friends here, and it's just a really nice, just quiet village, but everyone's really friendly. But yeah, it's been good in Pondsnooth. My dad was living it was like a flat on the side of a house, almost like an annex in Falmouth. And I used to see him every other weekend and stay there for the weekend and a couple nights in the week, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was like every other Wednesday or something. I can't remember, but I still saw my dad a lot, and obviously he only lived 5-10 minutes away. So if I ever wanted to see him, I could go and see him. So yeah, it was still good. I think this helped me, the fact that they lived so close, because obviously if they lived far away and didn't get on with each other, I probably wouldn't have seen my dad that much, because obviously I was living with my mum full time, pretty much. So yeah, it made it good, and also it made me and my dad probably really close, as we still are now. It's almost like we're best mates, me and my dad. We get on really well, we've got the same sense of humour. If I shaved my head and didn't have a beard, I'd look exactly the same as him. So yeah, we get on really well. Also, mum and dad never stopped me or my brother from seeing either parent. So if we wanted to spend more time with the other one, then that's absolutely fine. So because of them getting on, and there was never any hostility between them, I think that helped a lot growing up, because I know some people, close friends of mine, whose parents have split up, and all they have is bad words for each other. They haven't spoke since. And it is sad to see, because it probably affects them quite a lot. So, yeah, that was it, growing up my first 4 or 5 years. So when I moved to the new school in Kennel Vale when I was 5 years old, there wasn't really anything I struggled with overly. I almost found it like quite fresh, it was nice going to a new school. It's a lot smaller. So obviously my first school, St Francis in Falmouth, there was 400 people. A bit more than that, I think, in the whole school. At Kennel Vale and Pondsnooth, there was 80. So in my year group alone, there was me, I think 4 other boys and 6 girls, and that was it. So it was easy to just knit into those groups and just I just found it easy to make friends. And some of those people I'm still friends with now from primary school. So I've known them for 16, 17 years, and I'm still friends with them. I still speak to them sometimes now. Up until a year ago when I left the building site, I still seen one of them every single day because I was working with him. And we used to hang out all the time after school. Obviously went to the same school. So yeah, it's nice. I've made friends for life probably from that primary school. So obviously being a small school, it is good, and I feel like it probably made my development in terms of learning go even better than it would have, because it's a lot more personal when there's only 11 of you in your year group. The teacher's got a lot more time for you. There's less disruption in the class. There's less just stuff going on. So yeah, it was good moving primary school. I think it's definitely made me a better person now than if I'd stayed at one in Falmouth school. So when I was growing up, we used to go on a lot of holidays, me, my mum, my brother, my stepdad, which was really nice. It's obviously we're in a good position to do that. I had a good upbringing. We lived quite comfortably, which was really nice. So this hasn't affected me in a negative way. Well, not in terms of me being like, oh, I will go on loads of holidays and getting cocky about it, or being a bit snobby about it or whatever, because I'm far from that. But I think it probably has affected me, because in a positive way and a negative way, because I've got loads of good experiences. I've seen a lot of different places in the world, been to different continents. So for that reason, it was amazing going on all of these holidays. And obviously when you're that young, you don't really appreciate it as much as I do now. because you don't understand the value of money. You don't realise how much these holidays cost. So in terms of negative effects, I think it's possibly affected me because I've got these expectations now in my life about, because I've been brought up so well by my mum and my stepdad and my dad and my stepmum now. It's given me these expectations in my life that I'm going to have to be like that for my kids, like take them on holiday all the time. It's good for motivation purposes, but also it can get me a bit down if I'm like over the last couple of years when I haven't known what I wanted to do in my life, and I've been thinking, how am I going to provide this perfect life for my future family? But you've got to make sure you're good in yourself before you're trying to start a family or settle down with anything like that. So yeah, it's started to affect me less now, but I still obviously think about it. I'd love to be able to do that for my kids like I've had done for my life. Obviously my dad took me away as well, so yeah, I had a good upbringing, to be fair. So primary school life was all good. I was just a kid without a care in the world, other than when I was next playing football or what I was going to do when school finished. So that was amazing, to be fair. Secondary school. Was I nervous about going to secondary school? Maybe I was a bit apprehensive before, but then we had like the taster day or whatever it's called. I think they used to call it stepping stones or something weird at my school like that. But with that, we went into school and integrated with people who were going to be in our year group, and I've got people who my mum was best friends with growing up, and their children are my mum's godchildren or whatever. So I knew a couple of people from other schools because of that. So that made it easier for me, because that means I could integrate with their friendship group and they could integrate with mine. So it made us all like one big group of friends. So, and like, I've never had a problem with making friends. Like, I'm I just get on with people. I'm a people person. Like, anyone who knows me will probably tell me that. I've never like angry at anyone, never hostile towards anyone. So yeah, I've never struggled with making friends. And when I get to know people, I'd like to think I'm quite fun. Like, I'm always cracking jokes and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I've never overly struggled with that. Also, the people I became close with in secondary school, they're still like my closest friends now, without a doubt. I still see all of them like as much as possible, even though some of them are at university. Even if I speak to them on FaceTime or just anything like that, group FaceTime, just chatting between us, I still make an effort of them, because that was like the most important years of my life probably, in terms of growing up, socialising, and yeah, I've made friends for life from secondary school. At this point, when I was just transitioning into secondary school, my dad found a new girlfriend, which is now my stepmum. This was, to be fair, at the time, this was sick, because my stepbrother, Rory, was my best mate growing up in school, primary school. We played football together for the same football team for our whole life. We did everything together. Even secondary school, we were still best friends, and we're still good mates now. But obviously, he's my stepbrother now. So at the time, we were both like, this is class. Like, we're just going to be living with each other, best mates. And my brother and my older stepbrother were in the same year at primary school, so they were mates. So yeah, it was good. That was a good point in my life. We had like a lot of fun, but we used to get up to a lot of just mischievous things when we were all in the house together. But yeah, it was funny. It was good. So in these first 12, 13 years of my life, everything was a good experience. I enjoyed everything. I was really outgoing. This was just probably, in some ways, the happiest days of my life. But I think a lot of people feel that way when you're younger. You haven't really got much care. Like, you don't care what's going on. So some good experience of those 12, 13 years was lots of holidays, obviously, like I've mentioned. My mum got married in Florida, which was like amazing, and my whole family was there, and we went to Disney World, and it was, yeah, that was an amazing trip. I also went on a football tour with my secondary school, Penryn. to Villarreal, which is a professional football club in Spain. So we went out there for a tour for a week and trained at their facilities and watched a game and just got to walk around Spain and just nice weather, played good football. It was nice. I also started playing badminton in this time frame. I was county champion for pretty much everything I could be county champion for in badminton. And when I first started playing, I think I soon realised, and a lot of people around me soon realised, that I was very, very talented at it, and I could have took it to a very, very high standard. I was also still playing football alongside this, so every day of every week I was training, whether it was badminton or football, and then on the weekends I'd sometimes have to go up country for a badminton tournament, usually bring home the gold, and then on a Sunday I might have a football match. So it was hectic. I was battering myself, but I loved every minute of it. But it got to the stage, maybe when I was 14 or something, where I knew one of them had to be dropped, and I've loved football for my whole life and I've always played it. So I dropped out of playing badminton, and I remember my mum was very upset. She was crying, and looking back on it now, maybe I could have carried on and I probably would have got to like a really, really good standard. But you know, these things happen. We can't dwell on them. And I loved playing football, and I loved it until I stopped playing it every weekend, and I still love it now, even if it's just going for a kickabout with my mates. But yeah, so that was the first 12, 13 years of my life was just full of good experiences. I loved every minute. And when I got to about age 13, I think it was, this is when everything started to change for me. So within a couple of years of each other, both of my grandparents on my dad's side died from cancer. I was very close to both of these, as my dad used to live there for a little while when he was like in between houses and not in a relationship. And so whenever I was at my dad's, I was at my grandparents. We used to sleep in the lounge, me, my dad and my brother, in this little small bungalow they lived in Falmouth. But it was good. I was close with both of them. We used to go there to eat stew, my grandma's homemade stew every week, once a week, and go for roasts on a Sunday when I was with my dad. So yeah, that carried on throughout my whole life, even when my dad wasn't living there. So I was very close to both of them. Also, my grandma used to come on a lot of trips with us. Like whether we used to go to Ireland quite a lot, because my dad loves it in Ireland. We've been like to Cumbria, the Lake District. And my gran always used to come. She used to love it. She used to love getting away with us, being with all the family. But my grandpa, he never came. I think the furthest he's ever gone was Blackpool on his honeymoon when he got married to my gran. And that was probably the only time he's ever crossed the Tamar Bridge. So he was just in the fishbowl in Cornwall, and he was there his whole life. He was a bit of a miserable bugger, but he meant well, and like, I still loved him. We still got on really well, and yeah, I was still really close to him. But everyone in my family will admit that he was pretty miserable all the time, or just moaning about something, stingy with his money. But that's not a negative thing. But I think looking at it now and how my understanding's changed of these things, I think it's safe to say that my grandpa probably suffered with mental health issues, especially depression, but you just never spoke about it back then. It wasn't such a common thing for people to understand or for people to talk about. But I know me and my dad have spoke about this since, and we've just said that he probably was suffering with depression, and we don't know how much of a toll that took on his life and how much stress that added to him, because it just wasn't talked about back then, or he might not have even thought about it, so it might not have affected him. But yeah, I can see that he definitely struggled with something in his mental health. Also, in this space of 2 years, at some point in between all this happening, me and my stepbrother were walking to my dad and my stepmom's house in Falmouth, and a fully grown man, he was just a big bloke, loads of tattoos, and we didn't think nothing of it. He walked up past us, and then he just asked us to give him everything we've got, and he had a knife and a metal bar on him, so he was armed, and he was mugging us. And like, this probably affected me as well. So it was just something you don't expect to occur when you're like 13 years old, 14 years old, and you're just like school kids walking up to your mum, to your mum and your dad's house or whatever. And we were literally maybe 20 meters away from our house. And yeah, I think that was a big turning point in my life as well. And this is where the whole toxic masculinity side of things come into play. Obviously, you're at secondary school, everyone's going through puberty, everyone thinks they got bigger balls than everyone else. And like, I remember going into school with my stepbrother, and people had obviously heard about it. Like, it was in the paper about it, like it was on the internet probably. He did get sentenced in the end as well. He got 5 years because he mugged someone else, so fair enough. But the thing is, this whole toxic masculinity side comes out where you walk into school, and everyone's like, "Oh, I heard you got mugged," and you're like, "Yeah, well, yeah." As you know, there's no point asking about it, but yeah. And then they're like, "Oh, why don't you just fight him? Why don't you just punch him and like fill him in?" And then it's like, we're literally 13 years old. This guy's a big bloke, and none of my mates back then would have tried fighting this bloke. They might have tried running away, but none of them would have tried fighting him. It's just this whole toxic masculinity thing, and I think that's one of the reasons why men don't speak up about their mental health, because it's made to look like weak or not manly. But I think people should speak up about it more, because it might let this toxic masculinity just sit on the back burner. So yeah, I think I realised later on in life that this space of a couple of years was the root of pretty much all my mental health issues, and it just spiraled from there, I guess. So I remember not the exact day, I couldn't tell you what date it was, but I remember when my main anxiety symptoms first started. So I remember I was leaving my house to get the bus to go to school, and I'd just been for a wee in my house, and then as soon as I was walking out to the bus, I just felt like I needed to wee again, like really bad, even though I'd just emptied my bladder. I hadn't drank anything since. And this just spiraled out of control. I struggled to get the bus because I always felt like I was going to piss myself pretty much, even though I know in my head that that's not going to happen. It's just this whole thing going on in my head that I am going to. For example, sometimes I'd miss the bus on purpose. I remember we used to have the start of year assembly where everyone in the whole school would go in and sit down in the sports hall and have an assembly and just talk about just everything that was going to happen that year and how we did the last year, all of that type of stuff. And I remember missing the bus on purpose, so I obviously didn't have to get the bus. That was one worry out of my head. And then I walked from Ponsnooth, where I live, and I walked out through all the back lanes and like out to Mabe. I know a lot of you won't know where this is, and then down past Asda into Penryn to the school, which is a fair few miles, just so I'd miss the assembly as well. I wouldn't have to sit in there. I feel like I needed to go for a wee. And this is just a lot of things spiraled from this, when that just controlled my whole life. So all the way through my final years of a couple of years of secondary school, this affected me hugely. I still managed to do well on my GCSEs. I got 11.5 GCSEs altogether, which I was happy with at the time, but I knew I could have got better grades than I did, even though that is a lot of good grades. But the few C's I got, I could have got B's or A's instead. But yeah, overall I was pleased with it. So this was when I had to transition to college, and deep down I really wanted to do A-levels, because not to like big myself up or anything, but I had the intelligence to do them and do well in them. But because I didn't want to deal with the exams, because of having to sit in the hall and with loads of people in there and my anxiety, I ended up doing a sports diploma. There's nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed it. I've always been interested in sport, and it was very interesting, and it taught me a lot, and it probably helps me with this whole situation now by the stuff I learnt from then. So yeah, I did enjoy it. Should I have done better? Yeah, probably. Also, my mental health at this stage my anxiety was still very prevalent in my life and a big thing going on. Also, in my first year of college, I went for a breakup with my first girlfriend, and obviously that hits you pretty hard when it's your first girlfriend. My Attendance in my lectures wasn't very good. I think it was on like 49% for the first year. So I had a lot of issues with that because of my mental health and my assignments being like, it's just like a vicious circle. So I'd maybe miss a couple of lectures and then I wouldn't know what to write in my assignments and I get behind on my assignments. So yeah, it was all, I don't know, it was all a bit of just a nightmare, to be honest. I still struggled obviously with getting the bus. I wouldn't want to do it. I somehow managed to get lifts off of people, whether that was my stepbrother or just friends or people I knew, and they'd pick me up from Pondsnooth or drop me back to Pondsnooth. And this is weird because I'd still, even now if I'm the passenger in a car, I still feel like my bladder's full and I need to go to the toilet really badly. But it was better if I got a lift with someone who I knew than if I got on a bus with loads of people I didn't know, because that would just, my anxiety would go through the roof then. Instead of being like semi-grounded, it would be off the charts. So yeah, this was a bit of a weird phase of my life and just a bad phase in my life. Like, for example, my mum was working at Trelisk and she'd start at Trelisk at like 8 o'clock. And bearing in mind, my first lectures didn't normally start till about 9:15 maybe it was. I'd get mum to drop me in before she went to work at like 7:30, and I'd walk from wherever she was parking and walk into college just so I didn't have to get the bus. And people would always be like, why do you always come in so early? And I'd just be like, oh, just get some work done. But they all knew that I wasn't doing any work really at college at that time. So yeah, I was always trying to cover it up from people and not talk about it. So yeah, it was a bit of a weird situation. But yeah, that's just what I did. Obviously, people questioned it, and about why I wasn't getting the bus or anything like this, and I'd just say, I've lost my bus pass. It's just a classic excuse. I've lost my bus pass. I was in the final year of college for most of this, so I was like, no point me buying a new one because I'm not going to use it for that much longer. I'll just get lifts whenever I can, even if it means I've got to get up a bit earlier. So yeah, that was a weird time, and I left college with decent grades. I think I finished with distinction, merit, so it was nowhere near the highest grade I could have got, but it's still a high grade. But towards the end of college, I remember having 2 weeks left, or maybe 10 days left of college, and I was 14 assignments behind. So yeah, as you can see, I did well for what I had to do. But after I left college, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. Obviously, my anxiety didn't help because deep down I probably wanted to go to university, but I knew I wouldn't be able to hack it because of my mental health. I had an odd couple of jobs, like working in a shop, but I got fired from working in a shop because I didn't complete my probation period because I had more than 3 days off in the first 6 months, which is pretty mental if you think about it. But yeah, and then one of my mates who I grew up with, he worked on a building site, just labouring, and he said he could get me a job for, I think it was $7.50 an hour at the time, but I was like, class, that's like 300 quid a week. And for my age at the time, that was more money than any of my friends were earning. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm there. So I started working on the building site full time. The money was decent, but to be honest with you, the work was shit. It was just horrible. Like just moving stuff all the time, or just sweeping a room that was then going to get dirty again in the next hour or two, just carrying big loads of timber from one side of the building site to the other, and we were on a big building site as well. But like I made friends there. I got on with a lot of the people there. So yeah, it wasn't a negative time in my life, but it was just not what I wanted to be doing. I got back with my first girlfriend, so that was a good thing. I wasn't exactly happy with my life, but I was content with it just passing by as I was comfortable. So that's not a great thing, but yeah, I was content with being comfortable, which I now know is probably not the best thing to do. So I got fed up of being on the building site, and when I was 19, I think, I decided to apply for a university course at Truro College. So this was a degree in exercise, health and fitness, which was very broad. It covered different subjects from nutrition to anatomy, physiology, strength and conditioning. it was very, very broad. So it wasn't specialised to any one thing, but I definitely learnt a lot then. And yeah, but halfway through the year, my first year at university is when everything took another turn for the worse and changed a lot. My mum came into my room one day and I was playing on my PlayStation or something, or watching something on TV, and she said she needed to talk to me, and I was like, oh, I'll just speak to you in a minute. And then she was like, no, I need to talk to you. So I turned it all off, and my mum started getting upset, and basically my mum had been diagnosed with lymphoma, which is cancer of the blood, and there's no cure for this. So with other tumours and cancers, you can get chemotherapy and the cells can disappear, but with lymphoma, when it's cancer of the blood, there's no way of treating it to get rid of it. But it's treatable in terms of you can prolong someone's life with it, but yeah, you can't get rid of it. So obviously when this first happened, I was in bits and I didn't really know how to deal with it, because a lot of the time my mum's been the person I've always spoke to about my mental health and bad things going on in my life, and now she had such this cloud over her life, I felt like I couldn't talk to about any of these things, so I probably bottled it up more in myself because I didn't want to put her under more stress. And obviously when you first hear the cancer word, your immediate thoughts is, oh my God, like they're going to pass away within the next year. But with lymphoma, people have lived with it for 20 plus years, but there's a lot of different stages and different types. So my mum's healthy now. She still cycles. She still listens to me vent about all my problems, and yeah, she's still healthy. She's just exactly like she was. She's normal. Her lymph nodes had actually gone down when she last went to see her specialist, which is positive. So there's no talk about any treatment yet. But yeah, that was a big turning point in my life, and I think it just changed everything. And I remember emailing my tutor and explaining the situation. Or it might have even been my mum that emailed her, because obviously I took a week off or something because it was a lot to deal with. And I remember going back into college and my tutor didn't speak to me about it. She didn't ask if I was all right. She was just asking me about assignments and stuff like that. And it was kind of at that point I just thought, nah, I'm not really about this. I was getting fed up of her, and it affected my mindset and my focus and everything. And then I had my exams coming up in the May of that year. I planned for all of them, been revising, did mock essays, stuff like that, and I was pretty well prepared for all of them. However, I emailed my tutor a month before, probably, telling her about my anxiety and not wanting to sit in the hall with other people, and if I could do it in a private room. And basically, she said she couldn't do anything. And I was like, sweet. She was like, you should have let me know a few weeks ago. So I was thinking, all right, great. So yeah, it got to the day of my exam, and I just didn't turn up. Just didn't go. And yeah, that was... Yeah, I just didn't go, and she obviously messaged me like, why have you done this? And I just said, look, I said to you about getting me a private room by myself where I can do it. I'll be able to concentrate more. I won't be pranging out the whole time. And she said she couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, I think everything that happened in that year, and then just my relationship with my tutor in the end being quite a negative one, it just made me just not feel good about the whole situation. So when my first year of uni finished, or I stopped going for my first year, I went back to work on a building site, which was supposedly just going to be for the summer, and then I'd head back to uni. But after thinking about it for the couple months that I was on the building site, I thought, you know what, I don't want to go back to uni because it's just obviously not for me, and I'm struggling with my mental health still a lot. So I ended up staying on the building site for probably almost another 2 years. And yeah, it was just me working that dead-end job again. And then stuff happened on the building site, all linked with that toxic masculinity again. And so I remember one time someone who worked there was like a delivery driver almost, and they asked me to go to another site in St Maurs, and I was in Fiocc, so it was a bit of a long drive. And I basically just said to him, I was like, look, I I'd never told anyone on the building site about this, and I said, look, I can't come, and I just couldn't come. So I explained everything, that I was a bad traveller and didn't want the whole anxiety and the symptoms of it. So that was how it was. And then so this whole toxic masculinity thing came back into it, where my boss at the time, well, the site manager, let's say, he found out about this, obviously, because the delivery driver went to tell him just to say that he needed to take someone else. And I remember he came down to me, and I was just helping the blockies out down at the bottom, and he came down and he was like, oh, anxiety, that's a good excuse for not wanting to go and do something. Just like, you could have thought of something better than that if you didn't want to go, just being lazy. And I was thinking, like, what are you on about? Like, you literally don't know anything about my life. You don't know anything that I've gone through. And you're here trying to say that I'm making an excuse about it for not wanting to, just being too lazy to go on a drive to St. Mawes. And, like, this was just completely mental to me, because this just affected me hugely, because it made me not want to open up to anyone about it anymore. I remember another time when there was another site in Fiach and they wanted me to go there, and then I was on the top of the house on the scaffolding clearing some stuff up, and they were all down at the bottom. There was probably like 3 or 4 of them, and my site foreman was like, oh, well, Alex really won't want to go because he feels like he's going to wee himself in the car. And then, like, his few little mates around him who'd worked for the company for quite a long time were all just like laughing and being like, oh, so weird. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm fed up of this. And then that's just one thing that really, really annoys me about people, even now, when they just try and make a joke out of things like this, because if they'd experienced it, they'd know it's nothing to joke about. Also, I split up with my girlfriend in this time period too, and also my family dog, we had her for 13 years, I think. So I'd grown up with her, and we had to get her put down, and I watched her being put down, and this was like quite horrible, to be honest. But and then in November last year, 2019, I was involved in a car crash, and I was coming down a dual carriageway in the outside lane, and then the traffic slowed down in front of me, and I had wet shoes where it had been raining all day, and I was like, went to hit the brake, slowing down in front for the cars in front of me because it was starting to queue, and my foot slipped off the brake, and I hit the accelerator and smashed into the back of a car and wrote her car off. And yeah, this was, at the time I was like just in shock, and like everything was blurry, and I felt a bit faint, and yeah, I was just hoping that the woman in the car in front of me was alright. But this was the moment as well when I came to terms with that I was just very depressed as well, because like when this all happened, like I've never wanted to take my own life or anything like that. I've never thought about it. I've never like wanted to do it. But I remember thinking, like, if something serious did happen in that car accident, I did die, it wouldn't have affected me. Like, I was thinking about it, and I was like, I wouldn't have cared really, that's when I realised that I was actually in a very depressed state at the same time as my anxiety. So I was getting upset a lot at this time, a lot, as my life seemed to be rubbish at this time. I was doing a horrible job. I had no sense of self-fulfillment. My only escape over these couple of years was the gym, which probably saved me from spiralling and being even worse than I was anyway, because it kept me focused. It's just training and exercising works wonders for your mental health, as I've spoke about before, and as many of you know. I was seeing a private counsellor. She was really, really nice. My mum sees her for something called shiatsu, which I'm not really sure what it is, but she is also a counsellor, and my mum recommended going to talk to her, and she was really nice. It was good. We got on really well. I'd definitely suggest going to a private counsellor if you can afford it. Like, I was paying £40 a week, but it was worth it. So yeah, that helped. And then probably in February, March time this year, is when I hit rock bottom, and I think for the first time in my life, my depression had overtaken my anxiety levels, and I had no interest in doing anything. I had a meltdown, and after speaking to my mum and weighing up the options, I decided to book a doctor's appointment and just get medication, because I've tried counselling, I've tried other things, and I always just kept spiraling after a while. So yeah, I decided to try some medication and get some antidepressants, and I got prescribed sertraline. So, and then I started taking this, and then shortly afterwards is when lockdown happened, the first lockdown, and I kind of made a promise to myself that I'd never step foot on a building site again, because I hated it so much and it was just affecting me negatively in such a massive way. And I just thought I needed to sort myself out. And lockdown, was it good or bad for mental health? I think it was both, because obviously you can't see your friends or anyone, which is a big negative for me. But my brother was down. He ended up being home for like 3 months, and he lives in Worcester where he works. So that was nice. So that probably improved my mental health a lot more than if he wasn't there. And the weather was amazing, so it was always sunny, and I always feel better when it's sunny. I hate winter, I love summer. Also, I guess it was negative because I couldn't go anywhere really at all because of mum's illness, making it a high risk. In this time frame, also upped my medication to 100 milligrams, as I wasn't noticing too much of a difference. So yeah, it was obviously hard to notice a difference in lockdown because it's not normal. So yeah, you don't really challenge yourself. This is when the start of the Korf Wellbeing page started. And I thought about designing an app, podcasts, and all in all, this has probably changed my life because I've realised it's something that I want to do, and this is something I'm passionate about. So yeah, and then I stopped drinking a couple months into lockdown, which has made me feel 100 times better. Because at the start of lockdown, I was getting steaming with my mates on FaceTime and just being a bit mental. And I was drinking quite a bit before we went into lockdown. So yeah, it was good to stop drinking. It's made me feel a lot better. I was gardening for a couple of months with 2 of my mates, as this was when the lockdown was lifted. So like probably over a couple of months, like August, September. And yeah, this was good. Like, it has a lot. Gardening is shown in studies to have better, more positive effects on your mental health than even exercise does. So that was good for me to start doing that. And it was really nice weather when we were gardening too. So we got a healthy tan just with my mates all the time. We were outside, obviously, good money, better money than I was on the building site. But then for some reason in around August, September time again, probably September, I started feeling a lot worse in myself again. So I rang the doctors again, and I upped my meds again to 150 milligrams, which is what I'm on now and I'm still on. And I do feel a lot better. I don't have a negative mind state like I did. My anxiety still affects me, but the whole just feeling down all the time side of it's gone. So that's a big positive. And then I made a decision just to go for it with the podcast, and it's the best decision I've made. It's had a huge positive impact on me and just made me feel really good about things, that I'm doing something to help people. I'm doing something that I enjoy doing. So yeah, I'm really chuffed with it. So I just stay motivated by thinking about all the how I used to feel and how I feel now, and not wanting to go back to how I used to feel. And also, I think if you I don't go to the gym or train or anything like that so I can look good in summer when I take my t-shirt off at the beach and impress people, just because it makes me feel good. Like, it's being fit and being healthy is amazing, and it's helped me so much, and it would help anyone a lot if they're struggling with anything in their life. It's just up there with the best things to do for your mental health. So that's how I stay motivated. And I think even when you feel like you don't want to do something, your main motivation should be from yourself. So if you can't be motivated in yourself, then no one else is going to motivate you, and nothing else will. So that's how I look at it. Obviously, my anxiety still affects me from doing certain things. My counsellor used to say that my main problem is that I think to the future too much and overthink everything. So I'm never living in the present. It means that, so say someone said something like, oh, do you want to go on holiday next year? Before me being like, yeah, that would be sick, I'd be like already planning out what could go wrong on the holiday, the plane journey, if I had to get a bus anywhere, just everything. I just overthink so much, and yeah, this obviously affects my anxiety because I overthink too much. I don't find it difficult to socialise, but if I was, for example, when I was still drinking, I'd rather socialise at a pub where it's like just not really crowded like a club and there's loads of people in there and there's people being weirdos, and I'd rather just be sociable with my friends in a pub having a laugh. So yeah, there's things that make me feel more comfortable than others, but I don't find it difficult to socialise. I think starting this page and this podcast and just finally realising what I want to do with my life has been my biggest accomplishment in my life so far. It's just finding something that I can enjoy, that I could hopefully turn into a career one day, and just opening up to everyone about my issues and trying to help others open up. That's quite a good feeling. It's quite rewarding. And once you've got it all out there on the table, you know that no one can judge you anymore, or no one can say anything, because everyone knows, and because they know the details of it now after this podcast, so they won't think anything of it. But yeah, I hope this has given you a big insight into my life. It's never easy talking about these things, but trust me, if you do have something to talk about, or you're bottling something up, talking about it helps so much. I would advise anyone to just talk to their loved ones. That's just what I want to do. I want to inspire people to open up, and if they're struggling, just talk to people, man. Like, we're losing way too many people due to them not wanting to open up from fear of judgment, and like the male suicide rate is so high because obviously it's not seen as manly to have mental health issues or cry or get upset. So, but yeah, I'd like to encourage people to talk a lot more than they do, and it's so sad that we're losing a lot of people, young people, older people, just taking their own life because they can't talk about things that are affecting them. Like, there's been a lot of people who I've got mutual friends with, and they've taken their own life in lockdown just because it's just mental. And I think the world needs to talk about it more and just stop people from having to feel like the only way out is to do these things. So yeah, thanks for listening to that one. Obviously like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Tell a friend, share it up, and I'll be back with a new episode soon. Thank you very much.